I see a few squares. I see a few faces. Hello, everyone.
Starting to fill out. We got faculty members joining.
They can't see you, El. That is my daughter. Our daughter is waving, but
You don't
she
have the
can hear.
video turned
Yeah,
on.
just say hi. No, they can't see you. Just say hi. The life of artists and parents is quite a juggle.
Quite a life right now, especially with
Yeah,
all this.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. So if you all hear me pause or you hear this tiny, precious little voice, that will be our daughter crashing our lecture here. Say hi.
Adding to
You.
it, not crashing.
Hi. There you go. What's your name? L. That's right. How old are you? 3. Yeah, they can't see them. They can't see the fingers.
She's holding her fingers up, isn't she? Okay, I think we're starting to slow down. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief little intro. Today, of course, the second I start talking, they always want to join. Today we have Kevin McCoy. Kevin McCoy is one half of the duo Work Play, which is an interdisciplinary design duo based out of St. Louis. Kevin received his BFA in graphic communication from the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Whoop, whoop.
Hold on, letting a couple other people join in. Uh, and recently graduated from Sam Fox School of Design and the Visual Arts at Washington University in St. Louis, earning his MFA. Danielle, who is not with us on the talk today, is a conceptual artist, writer, and educator. Together, they combine illustration, minimal contemporary design, along with experimental printmaking techniques into their art practice. With their use of design and printmaking, the collaborative duo has expanded their practice to textile arts, site-specific installation, publications, and bookmaking to deliver an acerbic dose of revelation to inspire audiences and trigger experiences. They continuously experiment with new techniques, seeking to push beyond the perceived boundaries of art, design, and printmaking. Workplay has shown their work locally and nationally, including at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, the Spring Break Art Show in New York, the Sheldon Galleries in St. Louis, Lil Street Rooftop Gallery in Chicago, and O Cinema Wynwood in Miami. They attended residencies with Forest Park Forever, Acre, and Santa Fe Art Institute. They have sat on artist panels, given lectures, and continue to teach and work as studio artists and are involved in their local arts community here in St. Louis. So without further ado, if we could please give a warm welcome to Kevin McCoy.
Emily, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to start out. I like people to loosen up. My wife purchased a singing bowl, Tibetan singing bowl. I'm going to strike this, and it's just to clear the air and, take a deep breath, wiggle around, relax. I'll sound it now. No, no, Harvey. And the reason, before I kind of get into our spiel, we're very spiritual artists. So a lot of the times, things that we create, we will never really take credit for that work. You'll probably hear that again in this lecture. We just try to really tune in to a higher source and let that take over and lead and guide us. So it's very intuitive, our process. So as Emily mentioned, I work alongside my wife, Danielle. We do have a practice that is called Workplay. It is kind of twofold. It is art discipline and also a design practice that kind of merge. And we like to blur the lines between the two. And we like to address some of these, notions of representation, disparities within our American society, and also master narratives. Hold on just a second. All right, so I've been kind of working on, and my wife always, she gets on me about this. She says I'm long-winded and I'm a talker. So rather than flipping through like 80 something slides, I did cut it down to like 55. And I wanted to just focus on a few things to give you a more in-depth look so you can understand the driving force behind the decision making and some of the things that we've created. So I'm gonna start out with a quote. So Nina Simone, she's an American songwriter. I'm pretty sure some of you have heard of her. And I remember this quote, my wife actually told me about this. She says, an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times, which we certainly can attest to. And as artists, we continue to investigate some of these issues maybe that are ingrained within our society. You know, when we think about these issues, we think about the recent cries for justice in the form of protests. One of the most notable forms of protest that I can think about dates back to 1968, but there are also a few things to notate that was happening during that time. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Black Power Fist that was hoisted during the 68 Olympics. When I Googled it, this is exactly what I found. Of course, I got rid of the Google logo. So one of the first things during the 68 Olympics, which made a notch in history from a design perspective, is Lance Wyman. If you all are not familiar with him, he was primarily the designer that created what you see here, which is the 1968 Olympic brand identity, really ahead of its time for the 60s. He created a bunch of creative assets that pretty much blanket the Olympic arena. And this was deemed kind of the pinnacle of modern design. But also during 1968 in Mexico City, there was a lot of social unrest at that time, and people were taken to the streets to protest the political corruption that was going on. Also, another thing that happened during the 1968 medal ceremony was this, where you have two African-American athletes. Hold on, sorry, got my phone silent. You have two African-American athletes, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, shown here, who staged one of the largest political demonstrations in the Olympic Stadium in Mexico City. Now, we had an exhibition at Project Plus Gallery, which is located in the Central West End back in 2017, it's a group exhibition. And we decided to do a series called When Stars Align, kind of play on words. When stars align, meaning, actually stars, but also stars as in athletes when they align with their true inner purpose, which focused on Black athletes and political demonstration. That's what the work was really about. And Kaepernick was a hot button at that time. And we were thinking about this series of work as clusters. So we're examining the similarities between the past and the present. And, when we started doing research about the 68 Olympics, I found out about these two African-American runners and this article, which is seen here. This is written by Brent Musburger. He basically calls the athletes black-skinned stormtroopers, which you can see highlighted there, which is very, very potent. Words are very powerful and their meanings are very loaded. Also notate the headline, Bizarre Protest by Smith and Carlos Tarnishes Medal Ceremony. And so that line, black-skinned stormtroopers, is what we decided to kind of focus on. So in this work, we chose to pull the quote out of that article and silkscreen it directly on top of this archival image using roofing tar. We've had a lot of inquiries about how to print roofing tar. People still don't believe that that's printed in roofing tar. But again, we just try to, get ourselves in tune with a larger body or creative body or being to help us work through this process. And we were able to print it directly, cleanly, in one pass. So this was the work that pulled out that quote to reference that article. Now, keep in mind, the reason for tar is a very loaded material. You think about tarred and feathered, which is a metaphor for severe public criticism, but also the racial epithet tar baby. Speaking of public critique, here is Colin Kaepernick and his refusal to stand during the anthem, which is definitely one to discuss. So we have something that is happening in the 68 Olympics and also something that is happening current day. Kaepernick, a lot of people don't know this, Kaepernick originally sat during the anthem until he had a conversation with Nate Boyer. Now, Nate Boyer was a former Green Beret and also a fellow NFL player. And he wrote an open letter to Kaepernick suggesting that maybe he should kneel instead of sitting down to be respectful to those in the military. And so soldiers take a knee at a fallen soldier's grave to show respect. So Colin decided to take a knee instead. Nevertheless, he still refused to stand. So when Kaepernick decided to take a knee, the public criticism still continued. It got worse. The fact that he was taking a knee was paying respect to those that actually served in the military was never infused into public discourse. Well, we probably know why. Speaking on the subject of respectability of the military and the US flag, I don't know if anyone remembers this. This is Kid Rock performing at the halftime show at the Super Bowl in 2004. I think this was between New England and the Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. And if you investigate the construction of his poncho, it is clearly a flag without question. No critique there. Here's another little interesting tidbit that a lot of people don't know. What many NFL fans don't know is between 2012 and 2015, the Department of Defense spent $6.18 million on what senators call paid patriotism. So this includes like American flag displays, ceremonies. As recently as 2015, the Department of Defense was doling out millions to the NFL for such things as military flyovers, flag unfurlings, and even enlistment campaigns. And interestingly enough, national anthem performances. However, nothing was found in the contracts that mandated that players stand during the anthem. I wonder how many fans actually know that. Now back to Colin. So there was a bunch of people that were very enraged because of his refusal to stand, and they demonstrated their dislike by torching. I've seen some people actually shooting his jersey, peeing on the jersey. All of this could be found on YouTube. We certainly found it when we decided to make the piece. And what's funny is it was a protest of the protest. Now, let's take it a step further. This is a doormat consisting of Oakland Raiders jersey, Marshawn Lynch, and of course, Colin Kaepernick's jersey. It's joined together and is simply taped to the ground as a makeshift doormat. The message is very clear as well as disturbing. Lynch, Kaepernick. Now, this was seen outside the Snafu Bar, which is located in Lake Ozark in Missouri. That said, we decided to purchase a real jersey and frame it as memorabilia. You know, oftentimes many fans will frame their favorite athlete's jersey, maybe because of their accomplishments on the field. You know, they're basically relegated to just simply stats. But Black athletes are definitely no exception. You know, they're only celebrated for their athletic prowess. But the moment one decides to use their platform to speak on society's ills, watch out. I mean, look at LeBron. LeBron was talking about some of the things that's going on with, you know, our political leanings and climate. And I think one person told him to just shut up and dribble, right? And so we wanted to celebrate Colin and frame his jersey and for his work done on and off the field. And so for this piece, we decided to kind of slightly torch and burn and singe that jersey to reference what we found on YouTube. Also, you'll see that the plexiglass is kind of smoky tint, which is also used to reinforce this conceptual idea. So, you know, sometimes, you know, work has to be thrusted out into the public sphere, whereas the gallery setting is probably not the best output. That said, we decided to create a billboard, which was actually crowdfunded, by the way. You know, we live in a very tumultuous time. It's riddled with political turmoil and, of course, increased widespread violence. And that said, we decided to use our practice to make our voice heard in the public sphere. Pretty sure you remember this. Back in 2017, there was certainly a lot going on, still is. You know, many of you probably remember this picture of tiki torch carrying white men. I mean, you should remember unless you were hiding under a rock. Images like this began to surface after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, which took place August 11th and 12th of 2017. You know, and what we found interesting is during this rally, white supremacists, neo-Nazi and Trump supporters gathered to make their presence felt. Some of these folks kind of laid below the surface, Because of the political leadership, they decided to come on out and be bold with it. And we saw some videos that surfaced, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and there was some skirmishes between the supporters and the alt-right and counter protesters. And from my own personal observation of this video footage, you'll notice that the police took a very hands-off approach. They chose not to neutralize the tension between these two, the alt-right and counter protesters. Whereas in Ferguson, people were peacefully protesting and they were met with rubber bullets, pepper spray, tear gas. Big difference. It all finally erupted. And that was when a motorist by the name of James Alex Field Jr. deliberately drove his car into a crowd of people who had been peacefully protesting at this rally. Unfortunately, the young lady by the name of Heather Heyer, who was 32, died when that car hit a group of people protesting against this white nationalist rally. So with all that transpired in 2017, we opted to create a billboard in 2018. The billboard is typically a large advertising space that's used to promote a business or perhaps a product, but we wanted to use it as a space to challenge people to think critically about our political leadership and their actions. This piece is actually titled Bread and Circuses. Now, to take things a step further, again, that billboard wouldn't have the same read in a gallery setting, neither with this piece. So we're invited to paint on a boarded up windows of Barrett Herrera space, which again is in the Central West End. And this was kind of the height of, nationwide protest against police brutality. And in all honesty, I'm gonna be honest, my wife and I didn't know what to say. We kind of were at a loss of words. We saw all of these images and videos circulating around George Floyd's death. And then again, with the recent deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, which happened earlier in the year that surfaced, we found out about. And then of course, the tragic ending of Breonna Taylor. This particular mural was designed to speak specifically to the white people that live, work, and play in the Central West End neighborhood. And how timely, right? This was painted well before that whole fiasco with the McCloskeys. Now, shifting from public work, I want to show you how we use design to visually address things that I hear or read about, as well as my wife. One day we got some mail, and typically I don't really pay attention to, if it's junk mail, I'll look at it and shred it. It's in the trash. But for whatever reason, this stamp stood out. So we got some mail from an organization talking about the NRA. And I don't know, I didn't even trip off of the sender or what the mail was about. I was just fixated on this stamp. I don't know, I just started staring at the stamp. I don't know what happened, like something just clicked. All of these things kind of came to mind. And so I'll have these exercises that I'll do in my mind's eye where I'll see images within images. And so I'll create something that basically derivatives from pre-existing designs. So looking at that, this is what I came up with. I want you to take a look at the eyes. I like to incorporate some very subliminal messaging. Does anyone know or think or may guess where those eyes, the shape, may have originated from? Give you a few seconds and then I'll spoil it. I feel like I need the the music. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do,
The Kool-Aid?
do,
The
do,
Kool-Aid Man?
What's that?
Kool-Aid Man?
No.
No.
Nope. One more try. Anyone? Don't yell all at once. No one?
Just like the comma?
This. It's actually borrowed from the blood drop cross, not shown in its entirety, which is the primary symbol related to the KKK. Again, my way of trying to push and exercise and think about ideas and how to expand upon those ideas from a visual sense. Now, unfortunately, because of the Breonna Taylor verdict, our heart is heavy. Um, and we don't want the world to forget her name or that incident. If you don't know what happened, Breonna Taylor was fatally shot on March 13th, 2020 by three plainclothes Louisville Metro Police Department officers while executing. Now they're saying it wasn't a no-knock warrant when they entered her apartment in Kentucky. The story is just sad and hard to hear, hard to deal with. Um, and so for that reason, we recently created a two-color risograph poster. This was probably about a month ago to bring attention to the killers of Breonna Taylor, these police officers. We drew inspiration from, of course, like the Wanted poster or vintage letterpress posters. And we collaborated with a local Rezo printer here in St. Louis. And he invited about 5 or so designers to create a suite of prints to be auctioned off. And the proceeds will go to any art organization of the artist choosing. We chose to donate our proceeds to the Bail Project. And we knew going in that this poster would not be hung up in people's homes like the other prints part of the suite. We created this specifically with the protesters in mind. You know, the poster actually bears a large type lockup. You see bold colors, potent messaging. So again, it's taking the design and making it to a functional piece. So it can be read quickly and also grab attention. And of course, we like to put some sort of subliminal messaging in our work, which we decided to use with, if you've ever seen any old school posters, they have like the union logos and things of that nature. And then this happened. About a week and a half ago, I got a DM from a person I never met, don't know, via Instagram, asking if we had any posters that they would like to purchase. And I literally came to tears. I broke down. And the reason I broke down is because this is why we fucking do this. We don't do it for likes. This is not to be these cool designers or, you know, get the respect as Black designers that we rightfully deserve. Nothing, all of that is out of the window. This is our way of trying to help out however we can, to be of service to humanity as a whole, especially being Black creatives, being hunted like deer, worse than deer, right? Our society is in the 11th hour right now. We have a lot of work to do, so this is our way of doing the work. And so to get a message like this from a complete and total stranger in Louisville, it's hard not to get shaken up and filled with emotion. Now, we're gonna delve deeper, take the plane up a few altitudes.
Take us there, Kevin, come on.
We took a turn from our work to speak on stereotypes. You know, stereotypes are simply cliche images or ideas about a particular type of person, or group, or thing. This here is Merry Melodies. It's called Coal Black, note the spelling, D7 Dwarfs, which was directed by Bob Clampett. Go look it up. You can check it out. And it's basically a remake of Snow White with an all-Black cast, filled with racial stereotypes. Plenty. Here's another one. This is from Tintin and his adventure in the Congo. Notice the blackface. They're hoisting up this white figure, indoctrinating kids at a very early age. This is Tom and Jerry. You know, one would say that's not blackface. Well, if you look at the hair, the hairstyle, like the barrettes, coiled, Black culture know exactly what they're talking about here. Let me make it very real to you. I saw this in person. No lie. This is a sculpture in front of a pizza store. So I was basically a visiting artist for a residency that took place in Steuben, Wisconsin, very far north. It was closed every time I went into town. So Steuben, I think from the local town that's nearby, it was about a 15-minute drive. So our residency was basically in the foothills. We would have to drive into town to get like regular provisions and things of that nature. It's about a 15-minute drive. And every time I went down there, the store was always closed. Because I just wanted to talk to the owner and ask a few questions. I was curious. And let's play a little game. I want you all that are listening to exercise a very critical eye. Can you tell me what you see? Is there anything specific that you notice about this sculpture?
The head has been knocked.
What's that?
The head has been knocked off before. I see like a crack on the neck.
Yep, the head's been knocked off. What else?
Looks
What
like
else?
the paint is coming off a little bit.
Paint is coming off. Anyone else?
It kind of looks like only the face is painted, like not even the back of the head.
So here's what's interesting. We're in Steuben, Wisconsin, way north. Winters can get very rough. Notice how pristine this looks. That paint is fairly new. It doesn't look or appear weathered at all. So this is well kept. That's what I thought was intriguing. I was like, I really want to talk to the owner. I just want to have a conversation. Was I furious? Of course. I just wanted to have a one-on-one. Now, let's break the rules from traditional lecture. Well, I think I've been doing that anyway. And I'm going to ask you all another question. Do you see anything unusual with this? Anyone? Anything you see
The
strange?
man is more like aggressive,
Uh-huh.
presented like almost animalistic.
Ah. Aha. Ding, ding, ding. Look at that. Now, I believe this was created in 2008 for Vogue magazine. The photographer, I believe, was Annie Leibovitz, where she portrays one of our most famous athletes as a ferocious gorilla. And I did some research and she said, well, that was not the intent, and I said, look at the images side by side. So I put them together. Make no mistake. This was not happenstance. The pose, even the dress color is very similar. This is very subliminal messaging. But also, here's something that a lot of people didn't notice. Look at the devil horns where the O and the G meet right behind LeBron. This is the power of design and how design works on your subconscious. Depicted as animals, Black people are demonized. So for this reason, we decided to reso-print a book. This is actually my wife's idea. This is all her conception. I was simply the client. I was the designer. She was the client. That's how she treated it. She's like, hey, I have this idea. I'm so sick of seeing, blackface. You have big fashion houses like Prada and Gucci that have done things. But that's more telling because they don't have anyone looking at what's going out the door. It just goes out, so it shows the lack of diversity. And so she wanted to create this book. And Black people in America have been taxonomized as savages, lazy, right? Dehumanized by mainstream media. And these are all derivatives of early scientific racism. You have pseudoscience. Carl Linnaeus is one you should look up. You should read about that guy. He's very interesting. And back in the 19th century, blackface was primarily used by white performers to demean Black people, but it was also a source of entertainment. The title of this publication is called Pot Calling the Kettle Black. That's an idiom used all across America in all Black households. And it is blatantly telling about the hypocrisy. It was underscoring, right? And so this publication offers critical observation of the use of blackface and its variations found deeply embedded in cartoons, pop culture, the fashion industry, and beyond. Now, I had this idea to create a book. We talk about working from, a spiritual place. I actually saw this book in a dream. It appeared to me. I was asleep. I woke up. My wife's like, what are you doing? It's 4 a.m. What's going on? And I had to just write it down, sketch it out. You think about artist books, artist book, the term artist book, where a publication becomes a work of art in itself. And so this is more so talking about, all of these different photographers. So we have some local photographers, Jen Everett, Marcus Stabnow, Chris Perrin. They all, contributed these photographs. And here's what's interesting about this. They've never really met each other, never been in the same space. But the way that they photograph people, places, things, really makes you take a closer look. You really get a chance to see shape, form, and texture, the materiality of objects. And that's what I thought was an underscoring theme, thematically speaking, that maybe we should try to address in this publication. And this whole book is printed on Tyvek, which has never really been done, and it was a pain in the ass to create. You have to use certain types of inks. It has to dry. The production cost is extremely expensive, but we wanted to make it affordable for everyone to enjoy. It's tear-proof, Tyvek, it's water-resistant. This book will probably be around more than I would be. We had a beautiful essay that was, created by Jackie Germain, wonderful writer, and then another beautiful poem by Alyssa Nolan, all part of Visitor Assembly. And so these images do just that. What's really important about looking at these photographs is trying to create some sort of sequence where this tells a story that makes your eye kind of go on this, journey to explore these notions of shape, form, and function. And then, lastly, our last project, this is actually with, my buddy has a firm, it's called Visitor Assembly. And we had a conversation. We were talking about, Black people, the things that were willfully omitted from the history books. Our histories are severely redacted. And in this conversation, just like most collaborations, people are really, they don't know how to approach collaboration. I love collaboration. I feel like it's the best way to get rid of ego. You have different minds on a project that come together, and that's when the magic happens. And so Marcus and I, it's called Assembly Play. So it's the combination of these two studios working together. So Visitor Assembly and Workplay to create these kind of bespoke items, very thoughtful items. And so we had this conversation about the contributions of Black people. We've built quite a bit. As a matter of fact, this T-shirt is laid behind the image of the White House, which is actually created with slave labor. A lot of people didn't know that. And so we wanted a very bold statement because we understand now is not the time to mince word or pull punches, right? So as you see on this shirt, it states, we built this shit, period. Those are the facts. Now, I did some research about some of these offerings, historical offerings that don't necessarily make public discourse. And I found one that I thought was really interesting, which is in Miami. And I wonder how many Floridians actually know this history. I think the number, don't quote me, was maybe 189 men total. Out of 189 men, there are around 30 to 50 men that were Black that they needed, that were workers building railroads. They needed the vote from these Black men to actually incorporate Miami. How many people know that history, and why is it suppressed? If you're suppressing these histories about the true contributions of all Black people, men, women, and the like, then you can push these narratives about us being lazy, right? Welfare recipients, savages. But people buy in and they subscribe to those narratives. They subscribe to the pseudoscience, which is actually BS. Because this information has been purposefully hidden from us, from everyone. And so we wanted to reposition these histories and do it in a way that people can feel proud. And this is for us. And so you see here, under that statement, in small text, in fine print, people can actually read what we have made. And this is just a few things. The list is very long. GPS was actually created by a Black woman. Go look it up, right? But that's not common knowledge. The fact that it's not common knowledge is not the issue. It is, why isn't it common knowledge? Why isn't it being taught? Especially to Black children, right? You look at the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, and this is going off subject with my presentation. I don't have a slide for it. If you ever look at the Statue of Liberty actually has shackles at her feet. The original artist, his name was Bertholdi. He went to Africa, he went to Egypt, he saw these sculptures, and he wanted to create a large sculpture to dedicate to the liberation of slaves. When it got to New York, they changed the idea. He said, I will let you change the idea, but the shackles must stay on the feet. How many people know that? If you don't believe me, there's a young lady that you should go look up. Her name is Dr. Joy DeGroy. I suggest all of you go look up her presentation, and she talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, in which, in this lecture, she actually addresses that fact about the Statue of Liberty. Because if people know these things, it will cause some cognitive dissonance. You have the things that you've been told and programmed to think, and you have actual truth. Completely different, two ends of the spectrum, right? So I actually was on time. It's 12:36. That, I think I would get to it as quickly. That is everything. Thank you so much for listening. I know this was a lot of stuff to discuss, very deep. I'm gonna be honest, it's very painful sometimes to create this work. We do not enjoy making this work. We do it because it has to be done, and people need to know the truth.
All right. Thank you so much, Kevin. You willing to stick around and maybe
Of course,
field some questions from
of
our
course,
faculty and students? Oh, there he
of
is.
course.
Hi. This is Kevin, everybody. We can see him now.
You can see me now. Yes. How are you all?
All right, guys. So, yeah, Kevin specifically wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time for any questions about their work or how they work together, or, you know, basically anything. So does anybody have any questions right now? So from Jenna Bauer, we've got, can you speak eventually on a few of your influences? Jen, I don't know if you're speaking outside of like the cultural influences, so maybe like artists or designers that you guys have always admired, perhaps?
Oh, well, I mean, the list, that's a long list. As far as, I mean, we're inspired by pretty much, there are a few groups. So there's jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So this morning, all morning, we were listening to Alice Coltrane,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that inspires us. Hold on one second. I don't want my computer to die. Okay. You know, we read a lot of books. So there's Toni Morrison, of course, there's James Baldwin. Artists, I mean, Amy Sherrill, Glenn Ligon, Chris O'Feely, Lorna Simpson. I mean, we're inspired by pretty much everything, but also we're inspired by, more importantly, conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, a lot of this information that we find out happens when we talk to our spiritual mentor. He shares a lot of stuff with us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're currently living in East St. Louis. This is the home of the East St. Louis massacre, the riots, where Black people were held here and women were beheaded, killed, right? And so we wouldn't have never known about that history had we not had those conversations. The same with my wife. Like, we have these conversations. My mother-in-law was talking to us about the brown paper bag test, or, you know, the Blue Vein Society. I don't know if you all have ever heard of that, but it's basically Black, you know, fraternities or social clubs
Mm-hmm.
using skin color as a bias. Or if you're darker than a brown paper bag, you don't get access. Or you're so light that you can see your blue veins, you are given access to these social clubs. We had never heard of that. So I think it's a combination of all of these things, the music that we listen to, the times that we live in, you know, the artists that are creating this amazing work, right?
Yeah.
You know, even these conversations with our family, you know, those histories, those oral histories that are being passed down. And for us, that's important for our daughter. You know, I have a confession. I just started finding out about Baldwin 4 years ago. You know, I feel like I'm lacking. I'm trying to play catch up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all of us.
Yeah, I went to high school. I read about
did us a major disservice.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, all of these things are inspiration for us.
Right. Who else has a question? We still got quite a few people logged on.
We can talk. It doesn't have to be questions. We can all just talk, you know. I'm loose with it.
They get so shy whenever I kick it over to the question.
What was the name again of the presentation or lecture you were talking about with the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, so Dr. Joy DeGroy.
Joy DeGroy.
Joy DeGroy, and I think DeGroy is DEGRUY, and her lecture is on the post-traumatic slave syndrome. which basically they're things that she's realized or done research. Black people suffer from the traumas of ancestors, which is true. It's literally ingrained in our DNA, and people don't think that's real, but it is. 4 or 5 years ago, a friend of mine, she's from Jamaica, she sent me this document to read where they did a test with lab mice, and they would shock the mother every time they introduced, the scent of lavender. They would shock her in the cage, and before she had offspring, they would do this. She had offspring, and they just wanted to see if the little tiny baby mice would respond to the smell of lavender, even though they didn't get shocked. This is something that was embedded in the memory of the mother. This traumatic experience. It basically created a Pavlovian system, right? And soon as they introduced the scent of lavender into the cage, even though these baby mice never been shocked, they freaked out.
Yeah.
So it's telling, like some of these things that we suffer is because it happened in our ancestral line. And these things we still have not been able to resolve. They're deeply embedded. And that talk was just eye-opening for us.
When I think that oral history, I mean, like, it's not that long ago, it's just like, you still hear those stories because it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
These people that you are related to, and it affected them directly.
Exactly. Imagine reading and seeing images of Black people swinging from trees, being cut, burned, ears were torn off of the bodies, the dead bodies, as souvenirs. And then it's 2020, and people are still being mysteriously hung. We're haunted by these past ills today. That's a lot of emotional toil to carry.
Right. Come on, more questions for Kevin. We got him for longer.
Hey, Kevin and
Yes, sir.
family. How's it
How are
going?
you? I'm good.
It's good to see you.
you.
Hey, I was wondering as you were talking and looking back at some of the work, I wonder if you believe hope and beauty are important aspects to come through in your work, or if you think that it doesn't necessarily have to be there yet.
So this is an argument that my wife and I have quite a bit. Is
good. I'm bringing up bad domestic stuff.
No. Any great duo have their arguments. Trust
That's
me.
right.
Like we get on stage, no one knows, but behind the stage, sometimes we battle about ideas. My wife is wanting to depart and go towards that direction of celebrating Blackness or peace or tranquility or carving out space for Black people, straight, gay, trans, doesn't matter. I want to dig into the history so it doesn't happen again. So we're at this crossroad, and now we're starting to shift where it's so much going on that now we have to shift and show a more positive viewpoint because people just don't have the mental space. We're already in the margins as is. And so now I think we're making that transition. That's an excellent question. We're making that transition to just celebrate culturally who we are. I think that's our next stage because that's something that's not really celebrated. We live in a world where this is full of anti-Blackness, right? Even if you Google the word Black, you go down a few definitions and it starts to get evil, sinister, invoking the devil, right? These things are always being used. Oh, he was in a black hoodie, right? And so we want to position Black people in a way where they can feel empowered or carve out space. And I think a lot of artists are starting to do that, to reclaim spaces that we couldn't inhabit.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
This is the other half. That's our daughter.
All right. Let me shut this.
I hope that answers your question.
It feels like a real tough thing to say as a white man, honestly, about like, yeah, but where's the good in all this? Because I know that sometimes we're not ready to talk about good and can't see good in the stuff that's happening, but I wonder, just thinking about, beyond that hit of truth, what comes next,
Yeah, I think for us, that Danny and I have been talking about, these shows where they're more so of an experience. We actually want to create a book. It would be Rieselgraph. Maybe we can collaborate. And and I can find some money to get cheaply, some paper and just one color. But a book that it's like a survivalist hand guide for Black people, right? Like some of the things that we've used to help put us or situate us in a good mental space, despite everything that's going on, like meditation, being around water, these Tibetan bowls, music that we listen to, books to read, that just puts you in a different place, to give you some sort of, outlook, positive outlook. And I think that's kind of the next stage. I think we're starting to, veer that direction now.
Yeah, I think that still has like this in it, I think inherently this criticism that you would even need that as a Black man, growing up in America, so that criticism is still there. But I like that idea that it shows, okay, what comes after that acting critical, being critical toward a society, toward a system, and those coping mechanisms I think are really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and it's also acknowledging that mental health isn't purely like something that needs to be addressed in the white community, but that like there's a lot going on, and it's okay to sort of address that.
Right.
And we all have to take care of ourselves. That's what makes us human.
Right. Right.
And because I think there is I think there can be a stigma, around mental health just in general. And so I think it's important to sort of see you guys, addressing that.
Thank you much.
I think it's really important.
No, there are times, there was a piece that Danielle did. It was Say Her Name. And it was like almost these prayer flags, but it was all the names of people that have been taken too soon due to violence, whether it's police brutality or not. And it lists the age. And I think the youngest was maybe 8. My wife knew the stories of all of these people, and silk screening those like flags was very difficult for her. It was very difficult for me when she told me these stories. And so this work is heavy. I think some folks may think that, we make this stuff to be shock jocks, but we don't. We're just not in a comfortable place, and we're reflecting, that discomfort. But to Tate's point, going forward, we're trying to now carve out spaces for those that are marginalized so they can breathe, right? Like we're in St. Louis or East St. Louis, and you are a product of your environment. You feel like things are steady, just compressing. We go out, we just went to go look at the Mies van der Rohe house, which is maybe an hour outside of Chicago. Just nature. And I just felt like I can breathe. And it's like, I want everyone to feel that, but especially Black people, because we're just under the microscope constantly. There's a wonderful book. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to butcher his name, Frantz Fanon. Black Skin, White Mask. I read it. I started reading it in grad school when I was working on my thesis. And he talked about being judged in like 3 persons. So like, historically speaking, you're being judged at that moment, you're being judged how you look or carry yourself or known associations all at once. And that feels out of body. And I think that's the reason why we're starting to shift now to, just making a space for people as an access point, despite everything that's happening.
All right, so we have a question in the chat. In your mind, is dismantling colorism a step to addressing institutionalized racism?
Repeat that again, I'm sorry.
It says, in your mind, is dismantling colorism a step to addressing institutionalized racism?
I think so. I mean, so the unique thing about colorism is it happens a lot in the Black community. I think that's a step. I think it's multi-pronged, because there are people of color that are not really in these very high positions. If you think about people that sit on the boards or folks that are making decisions, or even some of these fashion houses where you have offensive material going out the door. There was no one at the top of that pyramid to say, hey, this is not cool. This is going to be taken this way. I think addressing colorism is helpful so people understand the negative impact that it has. I don't think we talk about that enough in the Black community. that there's this divide, which all is derivatives from slavery. So you have the field Negro and house Negro, right? And the lighter the skin, the better the treatment.
Yeah.
The darker, you're out in the field, ugly, vile. Those things certainly exist in institutional settings. But again, it's the person that is exercising that is oftentimes not of color, right? We just internalize it in the Black community. So there is a difference. I don't know if that answers the question or
I
not.
do think pop culture is a big part of it, though. I mean, and there's like major ties from historically of just like pop culture and the upper echelon of people who run that. It's fetishizing certain types of people, and again, it creates those those divides in the Black community.
I mean, look at so we did a series of prints. There were lyrics, and I think it was a set of 5, 4 of which were from Kanye West. On one of Kanye West's earliest albums. This is what he said. I'm going to say what he said. Brace yourself. He says, in this record, I'm going to make sure these light-skinned niggas never, ever, ever come back in style. But that's telling. You have a person like Kanye West who does not have to give 2 shits about what people think of him. He's gotten notoriety. He has his own status, has all of these creative projects that he's doing, right? Kind of the top of his game, sonically speaking. And you have him dealing with colorism. That is so telling. I don't think people really focus on that lyric. And he said something else. He's like, remember Al B from Black Street? He was black as the street was. Again, he's addressing something that maybe he's dealing with internally. Yeah. I knew for a fact when I grew up in grade school, I couldn't really, no girls wanted to talk to me because I was dark. They wanted what they call the pretty boy, right? So I think the Black community has to address that. But in terms of colorism in institutional settings, there's not people of color at the very top. We're just dealing with anti-Blackness. Yeah. That's my opinion.
No, I think you're right. All right. Any other questions? Come on, guys. We got him for a few more minutes before we have to give him back to his family.
Sorry to go so deep here on so many things.
It's okay. Well, I mean, that's what we're here for, right?
Right.
Talk about this stuff.
Can I ask a question or make a comment?
Of course.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure. I've been dealing with some microphone issues.
I can see you. You're good.
Thank you so much for your lecture. What I noticed and what I really appreciate is like a non-violent communication style that you employ when you speak about things that are difficult. Like, I'm always waiting for somebody to be offended by something that you're saying, somebody that thinks differently, but I don't know if you can speak to it, but do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a way where you're speaking your truth, but you're also not really ruffling feathers, even though if people really listen to your truth, you're making them think, but you're not agitating them.
Yeah. Some of the work that we've made in the past has agitated people.
Yeah.
Again, we like to be very subliminal with how we position messaging. We've learned that sometimes it's just based if you put out the information that a lot of people don't know, right? Here's the facts. Okay, here's what you were told. Here are the facts. And then step away and say, all right, how do you take this? What's your viewpoint now that you have this information? I don't know if anyone, I used to watch Ancient Aliens on TV, on Netflix. And what's interesting about that show is like, oh, did the ship show up here? Could it be this? Like they tell you like a few things and then they leave it to you as the viewer to kind of parse through where you stand with the information that they presented. And I think that's what we try to do. Like, all right, here are the facts. Here's some things that we found. And then let me know what you get from that. And sometimes those facts are offensive because people don't want to accept those truths, right? Well, that information. And maybe that's the offensive part of it. Calling it out is offensive. It doesn't necessarily have to be the words, just I'm calling this out. And some people were really peeved about that mural in the West End. There was another one that I didn't show, and it was chalkboard paint, and it had one line that says, "Dear white people, where's the accountability?" And some worker wrote on there, "All lives matter." And it's like, okay, I hear you, but not every life is being hunted down and gunned down without justice served, right? Even blue lives. I'm not saying that all cops are bad. I think there are some that cross the line. But again, it's not about blue life. If a cop takes off his uniform, he's black, and he goes out, he's subjected now to the same treatment as everyone else.
Yeah.
Because he's not wearing the badge and the uniform. And that has happened. There are cops that have actually been shot that are black because they weren't in uniform, but they were cops. So it means that blue lives means nothing. You're still a black man or woman in America, and you're put right in the same pot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that answers the question, hopefully.
Well, I also just think that like you and Danielle just happen to be kind of like really approachable people to talk to just in general, just from our conversation we had yesterday. I think you're just easy to talk to, but
Oh, thank you.
that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you.
What else we got? Any other final questions for Kevin?
What's next?
What's next? Well, there's, if you go to the website, go check out that Tyvek book, just read about it, look at it. Also, we have a show coming up at Monaco. I think that opens next month, and it's to Tate's question. It is celebrating Blackness. It's unapologetic, which is something we've never really explored. We've been so fixated on the problems that exist that we want to thrust Black people up, position them at a high place. And so this show aims to do that in the midst of, the turmoil and the hatred that exists. I think beyond that, experiences.
You said that month at Monaco?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
It opens in a month at Monaco.
You
Yeah.
have to send me the info so I can share it with everybody.
For sure. We're really excited about that. And I think, eventually it'll become these experiences, the Black experience. And what does that mean? Culturally, music, when I think about when I go to my, family's house, music that's being played, how's it smell, all of these things, incense that are burning, things that you look at, creating an actual experience. I think that's kind of the next stage, working with composers to maybe do scores, and you just sit and listen, right? Like, that's where we want to go next. We are truly defining what Black is because everyone else seems to have a definition. So we want to take that back. It's like, nope, we're going to define it this way. And I think that's what this new body of work is attempting to do.
I think that's great. Sort of taking the parts that you want from that definition, turning them on their head, and then redefining it.
Exactly.
We're saying I don't fit in that box.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, Kevin, I believe we're at that time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, that was great. That was
Thank
awesome. Thank you for giving us so much space to kind of ask questions and just have a dialogue. I know that was something that me and you said we wanted to make happen. So
yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, of
on
course.
behalf of Danielle and myself. Yes.
I can't wait to see the new work. It sounds really, really uplifting, and I think we all kind of need that right now.
Yeah, there's some potent stuff that we've been working on, so it should be fun.
Good. Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful day, and yeah, I'll try to remember to send you the recording so you can have a copy of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. All
See
right.
you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
Have
later.
a nice day.
Have a nice day.